What I'm so excited about is younger and younger people are getting to the absolute frontiers of knowledge faster and faster and faster. We call it positive naivete. Like, you don't know how hard it's going to be. You don't know what you should or shouldn't do. And so you just do stuff and then you ask for forgiveness later.
One of the reasons why most events don't work for most people is because you don't know anybody there. Why do I open up to this person that I will never see again?
Organizational groups will start community building, but what they do is they measure ROI too early. It wasn't about trying to match this person to that in a hierarchy of like, you're the fellow and here's your mentor. No, we mixed these pools together. Hey, there's lots of people here who have lots to collaborate and learn from each other. And over time, you're going to develop relationships with these people. And we're here to help facilitate that over time instead of being prescriptive about it.
Danielle Strachman, welcome to the Hope Access. What a beautiful arc on this podcast that I started last year to investigate hope and what makes the most hopeful people I know, the most hope-inspiring people I know, hope themselves. What makes you wake up in the morning and just go about to do your jobs? I feel like we're not talking enough about hope. We talk a lot about hopelessness and what makes people hopeless. We know.
No.
I want
God. Okay, first off, thank you so much for having me here. And yeah, I agree. Hope is like something people don't talk about very much. And I went to a Foresight Institute event years ago, and they had these great stickers that said existential hope on them. And I was like, yes, existential hope. Like, I love this. And the things that bring me hope right now is this sort of crossover of what we do at 1517. We work with people who don't have degrees and are often the very first check that we write, either as a grant or as an investment. And actually, we also have a sci-fi scientist track, and it doesn't matter if they're degreed or not, that we do the same things. But the biggest place I get hope is the crossover of those tracks. And so we're having younger and younger people working on sci-fi tech and working for a hopeful, vibrant, resource-unconstrained future. And that gives me a lot of hope. And it's one of those things where I feel really blessed to do the work because I get to be in that hopeful place. If I had grown up as like someone who wanted to become an ER doctor, it might be really hard to have a lot of hope. But I've been able to put myself in the position of being in a maybe irrationally optimistic career.
And oftentimes when we inspire hope in others, we become more hopeful ourselves. I find very close to, the quality that some religions call grace, which is kind of the more you make of it, the more there is. It's a few people know that actually Interact Fest started with a salon on optimistic science fiction, which is
amazing.
My friend's house in London. A lot of frustrated scientists and technologists and writers. And we're just sitting around this sofa thinking, what happened? Why is it Black Mirror? Why is it
right?
Press?
Right.
We're sitting there feeling a little bit like crazy people because we were in tech and we were very optimistic about it. And we thought, is there something wrong with us? Are we being naive? So already I think at the beginning, for me at least, it was this question of why is hope a taboo? Why is it something that we need to intellectually defend? Whereas negative emotions don't have to be intellectually defended. You can just come in and be like, everything sucks. And people are like, great, here's a Nobel Prize. Whereas if you come in and you say, things are going fine, you have to share at least 17 graphs and argue with a bunch of crazy people on the internet. It somehow requires multiple doctorates to be hopeful about anything.
Yeah. No, it's so true. And what's coming to mind are a few things. I'm like, okay, let's see. Can my brain get linear here for a minute? One is that I was at the, what's that conference called? I think I think they're called the Progress Institute. They had a conference last year that I went to. It was really great. I'm going again this year. And they had Steven Pinker come and speak. And, the conference is about progress and whatnot. And he gave this talk about progress and how actually things aren't as bad as doom and gloomers are out there saying and whatnot. And while part of me was like, oh, cool, like this is I've heard some of this before. This is not new information, but okay, cool that he's saying this. But what dawned on me was, wait, why aren't we talking about accelerating futures? Why aren't we talking about just why are we talking about that actually things are better than we think? And I was so nervous. I was like, I want to ask him a question. I'm terrified. He is Steven Pinker. Like, oh my God, who am I to ask him a question? And I was like, okay, I got to do it. And like part of me also, especially as a woman, is like, okay, I want to model the behaviors I want to see in the world. So I was like, I'm going to model raising my hand and getting up as a woman, questioning Steven Pinker. Let's do this. Teachable moment for the audience. That's sometimes how I get myself to do things I wouldn't
In the world,
think.
right?
And I like stood up and I had the mic and I'm like nervous and I've done tons of public speaking, but I'm still like really nervous. And I was like, hey, we're here at the Progress Institute conference and we're talking about how everything's kind of fine. Um, but what about like, do you think as humans we have the agency to accelerate on this? And I knew what I didn't want to hear. And what I didn't want to hear him say was, well, I think everything is good enough. And he did. He said, I think this is good enough. And it just felt like a shot to the heart to me. So even though his message is sort of hopeful and hey, it's not all doom and gloom. And yes, we have a brainiac saying that and it gives some substance, but to me, that's not good enough. Like we can do more. We could have already done more. We could have done things like cure certain diseases, have technological change. We could have really simple things. Like in the US, we could have high-speed rail, like in more places, and we don't. Sometimes there's that whole phrase, parents love to use it, of like, why can't we have nice things? I feel like that about society. And sometimes
But
the
you're like,
US
good enough is not like good enough.
good enough is not enough. And I think and to your point, yes, I think we need more people being taken seriously for talking about hopeful futures, but more so than talking about it and thought leadership, we need more people doing it and getting their hands dirty to do it. And that's what makes me really inspired working with these young people is they're the ones deep in the trenches doing this, not just talking about it. And it's through their example that more young people see, oh, wow, not only could you be hopeful, but you can be like, you can have agency towards a hopeful future.
We talk so much about how hard it is today to be young, right? I mean, we probably did when I was young. I was just not reading the New York Times yet,
Yeah, totally.
Um, uh, before 15, 17, I mean, you co-founded the Thiel Fellowship, which, completely changed the foundations of how we think about cultivating talent. Each people should be starting. It started with this great contrarian stance against universities, which we still about. What is one thing that you think that other people disagree with you on? So from my perspective, I imagine your work centering around the question of hope, also in the sense that you want to find the most hopeful people, like the most kind of definite optimist young people who say the world is going to get better if I reinvent this thing around lithium batteries, or if I, if cure this specific type of cancer. Do you think based on the general narrative in the world, which is about how hopeless young people are, they are not going out, they are not getting laid, they are not trying to be anything else but influencers, whereas you see the segment that is anything but?
Yeah.
Do you think at this point in life that hope is somehow related to age? Is it somehow like musical taste that it develops at a certain time and we should actually be more
Gosh, that's interesting. I mean, I think cultural influence is very real. One of the things that I'm so thankful for is like, there's a word for I can't quite remember what the term is. It's like uh maybe it's anachronistic, something like that. People who feel like they weren't born in the right time period. I feel like I was born in the right time period. Like I'm a 1980s baby. I grew up in a very tech positive future. Movies like Back to the Future, Short Circuit, like Cocoon, which is about life extension. So all these memes got in my mind from the age of 6 that were very tech optimistic. And I think it's like I can't not attributes that as a huge influence. And when I think about even friends born in the 90s, which isn't that much, less than 10 years later, it becomes more doom and gloom, more AI is going to kill us all, things like that. And that's going to have an effect too. And so I don't know that it is about age necessarily, but I think where it does come in, because, you mentioned that like you get locked into certain sort of decades and times with music. I think there are times in your life when you are way more malleable to cultural influence. And that might be when you're a child, it might be in your teens. Maybe something crazy happens in your 20s and you're like, whoa, holy moly, this has had a profound impact on the way I think about the world. And of course, we think about just huge defining moments in culture and in history and the effect that that has on people. And that is undeniable. Um, I do think it's interesting that it's very popular. Like something that hasn't changed is every generation rags on the next generation. Like we've never had something where the next gen, like the older generation was like, wow, the new generation's amazing and so hopeful and so productive and so easy to work with.
They're not killing restaurants or like making everything premium mediocre.
This is like, as far as I know, it has never happened. So there's this very deep meme. Maybe there's some like, I don't know, genetic basis
Mhm.
that like you always rag on like the up and comers. And so people, and I'm sure there's data to show the things like, oh yeah, when you poll a third grader, they want to be an influencer now instead of an astronaut and whatever. And yes, there's problems. One, there's always going to be problems, but there are also the very high agency young people who are able to see through some of these systems and say, first off, one, that system is bullshit. And two, I'm going to do something about it. And this is true, I think, for every generation. Like there's that pocket of people, and that ratio probably changes given a particular generation. But what I'm so excited about is younger and younger people are getting to the absolute frontiers of knowledge faster and faster and faster. And there's that I'm going to do something piece that this we call it positive naivete at 15, 17 of like, you don't know what you don't know. You don't know how hard it's going to be. You don't know what you should or shouldn't do. And so you just do stuff and then you ask for forgiveness later. And you're not even trying to be manipulative and weird about it. You're just like, oh, I didn't know you couldn't just start a company in my basement or, couldn't just like work on a project. Um, and that brings people forward a lot. So I do get to work with a very special slice of the whole population. Both with our founders and community members. And this was true when I was running the Thiel Fellowship. I was so focused on the Thiel Fellows themselves, I wasn't thinking about the developmental change that would take place in the mentor pool. And that was interesting because over time we also saw that the mentors from the program went on to like do extraordinary things. And I was just really focused on like, hey, these like 17 to 20-year-olds we're working with. But of course, high agency people are going to keep being high agency. Like, and that does shift over time. There's actually interesting research to say like the older you get at first novel discovery, the harder it is to then make your like magnum opus discovery. So we're really interested in getting people out of systems that tell you you have to wait before you build your magnum opus and get started earlier.
Tell me about the mentors before we go further. So you allocate mentors, both if I understand correctly, this was the case at the Thiel Fellowship. And now at 15, 17, you allocate mentors to certain groups of young people. And if I'm hearing this correctly, you've noticed unexpected changes in the mentor pool as well, just by being subjected to the incredibly high agency, high aspiration young people. Is
Yeah,
this how it's happening?
absolutely. Well, okay, first off, I have really strong views about like mentorship and advisorship. And one of them is that to me, a mentor is somebody that is dedicated to your leadership over a period of time, maybe even your whole lifetime. Like there's someone who is really tracking your development. An advisor is somebody who is kind of more like, I'm here to like help you dig in on this one technical thing or a piece of what you're doing. And because mentorship is about the person and about leadership and development, that means that has to be a reciprocal relationship. And so sometimes the mentors in our lives, you don't call a mentor necessarily. You're just like, wow, this person and I, we have these great conversations and going back and forth. So one thing we learned early in the fellowship was that it wasn't about trying to match this person to that and in a hierarchy of like, you're the fellow and here's your mentor and this is going to work and you're going to like each other whether you like it or not and you're going to learn from this person. It's like, no, we mixed these pools together at events a lot organically and would say like, hey, there's lots of people here who have lots to collaborate and learn from each other. And over time, you're going to develop, relationships with these people. And we're here to help facilitate that over time instead of being prescriptive about it. And what was interesting actually was some of our mentors were even just a few years older than the fellows, and they were really savvy. And they're like, "Hey, I want to be part of this. I'm like too old for the program since we were looking at people 19 and under in the application, but got involved anyway." So someone who comes to mind is Stephen Balaban from Lambda Labs. He was starting to befriend different fellows. He at the time actually was working on, yeah, it's funny to like look back and see how many people were working on some form of like, very early AI headset, camera in a hat level stuff. And he was working with some of our Thiel fellows, and he's the founder of Lambda Labs now. So they're a huge company. He built that company with his brother. If you look at Dario from Anthropic, he was a mentor in the Thiel Fellowship. And obviously doing extraordinary things there and having such a profound impact actually on the young people that I work with today. I hear from young people about how they're using things like Claude therapeutically. I hear about people who are using it as a research tool, how to build their business, all these things. And yeah, again, we weren't focused on like, hey, what's going to happen with the mentors in this program? We were focused on what's going to happen with the fellows. But oh yeah, of course, in hindsight, it makes sense because a lot of the mentors would come in and they would say, gosh, I always wanted something like this. There was no support for me. I dropped out of university.
You're talking, I'm like, that's what I wanted my whole life.
Yeah,
And
right.
it doesn't exist.
No, exactly. And so they were like, wait, it exists in this place.
Yeah.
And now I can like pay it forward and also be around other like, people who understand that part of the journey. Like we even had one mentor in the fellowship who originally he did very well with a transportation, like I think it was sort of like busing software that a lot of different cities and municipalities used. He had dropped out of college
Harshita.
to do it.
The Harshita, no?
No, this is not Harshita. This is somebody else. But I know Harshita. And what's interesting is he had to fight his university because they started putting him on the cover of their like magazine using him. This is a guy named Josh Witten, if you've come across Josh, but he would have to fight the university about putting his picture as like a celebrity and a successful person from their ecosystem when he was like, you guys got in my way the whole time and now you're trying to take credit for what I did. And so like having people like that, I always called these people the OG fellows. I'm like, you guys were Thiel fellows before there was a fellowship. We're doing it when it was really radical, really hard, when your parents and your grandparents were like, you're a bum, you're living on someone's couch, what are you doing? And then yes, in the fullness of time, it was like, oh, that was a smart idea. Like, what do you know? Like your business did well, and now you're
on the cover, and
trying to put you on the cover. Yeah.
Oh, that's so annoying. But no, this is beautiful. And what you're talking about with regard to mentorship, I recently wrote a piece for Palladium. It hasn't been published yet. Maybe by the time this episode comes out, that there is this like in Interact, we talk a lot about stickiness and the fact that one of the reasons why most events don't work for most people is because you don't know anybody there. Right. Or you haven't seen the people there in a very long time. And so you always have to start from zero. And so you always only just get to a certain point. And in Interact, even before we had a platform, like even when Interact was like a piece of paper and a pen and my memory, I always made all the events and all the conversations around stickiness. So you always stay in touch with the people who came to the events. And eventually you know exactly who there will be. And you don't have to always start from zero because that's very tiring. And if you always have to start from zero, eventually you will kind of burn out. You will no longer be listening to what the person is saying to you, because why listen if you will never see them again? And you will also be sharing much less generously and intimately about yourself, because why do I open up to this person that I will never see again, or I will see again in like 3 years? And so having this kind of repetition, for which I think human memory and kind of our entire hormonal system is built, is so important. And with mentorship, this is, I think, the thing that's most missing, at least for myself, is there are all these incredible people and very intelligent, and you can go with very specific questions, and then it's going kind of 50-50 whether they can say something or not. But the context is scarce. Like, you want somebody who has been there for years, and you can, like, with a little update, they can kind of catch up what's going on with you. And it's kind of, I think it's true everywhere in life. It's true in careers for people, that there's no stickiness. In love life, like even second date for most people, it's a huge challenge.
Yeah.
Parties, dinner parties, like everybody invites everybody once, and then you move on. And I feel like we're in a constant state of grief. Like, you always let go, and I don't think humans are built to let go at all. We're built for ties.
Yeah, right. Man, this is interesting. I haven't thought about this. So in my heart, like, the thing I am is a community builder, and I've always been this way, even since being quite young. And I haven't thought about the sticky part. But I feel like, I feel like the sticky part is something that kind of comes naturally for me, of like, oh, of course we need to do this type of event or this thing a few times. Of course we need these environments where we get people together in smaller, medium-sized groups instead of large groups. Of course we need some framing around, like, my favorite question to ask people now, like, I was at an event yesterday, this like breakfast meetup, and there was a small pod of us talking, and it was mostly kind of businessy conversation. At one point, I was like, hey, I've got kind of a curveball question. And this person's like, cool, shoot. I was like, what are you irrationally passionate about right now? Like, what is your thing that you're like, this is the thing? Like, and this one woman opened up and she's like, oh my God, I'm so into coffee. And we had this really fun conversation with her about like coffee and like what she was doing, and like helping groups understand social mores, and hey, try a new type of question, and, like, go where your intuition gives you an inkling. Like, I had a feeling she had a very fun, irrationally passionate thing. So I was like, I just need to ask her this, like, because I was getting this energy from her. But it's interesting because, I think one thing people, and I see this a lot actually on the organizational side, organizational groups will start community building, but what they do is they measure ROI too early. And so they're like, oh, it's not working. And it's like, well, how do you know it's not working? They're like, well, only X number of people showed up at the event. And I'm like, were they the right people to show up to the event? And they're like, yeah, they seem pretty great. Uh, and I'm like, okay, well, it sounds like it's working. So an example of this, and I feel so blessed to have not had to, like, honestly try to track metrics that don't matter. But when I was at the Thiel Foundation, we would often do these like coffee and bagels with the Thiel Foundation. And we go to different campuses and we meet people. What we didn't have to do is report to Peter on, well, how many people came to coffee? Lots of organizations would want you to track who came to coffee, how many people, blah, blah, blah. Well, this one coffee we done on the Waterloo campus, and this is probably 13 years ago, before anybody was going to Waterloo's, before YC started going to Waterloo, 4 people came to coffee and bagels. One was Vitalik Buterin, one was Harry Gandhi, one was Liam Horn, all 3 who have become Thiel Fellows, and one was a guy who was like a year aged out, who was awesome, who like did not become a fellow, but we had him as part of our community.
One person, that's Vitalik. That was a good event, right?
That was a great, exactly. Those bagels were the $50 that we spent on coffee and bagels to meet those people was worth it. And of course, they were all like 18, 19 at the time, before anyone knew who they were. If we had been in this measuring mode of like, oh, it wasn't successful because we only had 4 people, had we had a 400-person event and none of those 4 people were in the room, that would be unsuccessful. And so the thing is like, you have to I say community building in part is like a faith-based activity because it's a lot about intuition, it's a lot about feel, and not what's the immediate outcome, because the outcomes that are important don't come until later. And I see this with organizations a lot. Like they'll be like, oh, we're going to start dinners or we're going to start this or that. And I'm like, cool, keep doing it. Like that's the way you measure this in time is by continuing to do it, because then you also hear these stories. An example of this is like we had Thiel Fellowship socials, and we were in a review with a Thiel Fellow and actually a couple of his mentors. And he said during this review that we had, hey, like, um, this person, he named this person, is gonna buy my product. Like I've made a product. I don't know if it's a business, but this guy wants to buy it for 500,000. And we were like, whoa, this is amazing. We knew who this person was. He was a mentor in the fellowship. And I was like, whoa, 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 whoa. How did that conversation even start? How did you meet him? Like he's in our community. How did this happen? He's like, oh, at the last social, he walked by the foosball table and we started talking. And then he does ed tech stuff. This is an ed tech product, and he's gonna buy it from me. And I was like, mind blown. And part of me was frustrated, to be honest. I was like, oh my gosh, like if we hadn't been doing these reviews, we would have never heard this story. And there are these ripples on community. And of course, that old Thiel fellow also like put money into crypto and like people like Vitalik and has also done really well in that realm. And that's all community, and that's like obviously his agency and the initiative there too. And it's about the context and the system that you're in and maximizing that. And as a community builder, it's about knowing that like that's like the grand scheme of things. Like we often say at 1517, my venture fund that I started based on sort of Thiel Fellowship principles is we're playing the long game. We run a teen camp for irrationally passionate teens. We're running it our third time this October. And people are like, oh, what's the ROI on teen camp? Well, for years, I've told people it's a wait and see game. We're going to see what's happened. Results are in. We just made our first investment in one of our previous campers who's working on a startup, which has been fantastic. We helped one of our campers negotiate his first job opportunity of two startups fighting over him. I mean, it's just amazing, but he's got stock options and a $200,000 salary as an 18-year-old who's on a gap year. We have multiple of our campers who have now interned at 1517 companies, and that isn't like a have to or we're going to match you. It was introducing them to some of our startups because we do a deep tech field trip day as part of this camp. And then those young people taking the initiative because they have hope and because they want to work on things that are really important, taking the initiative to keep in touch with those founders. And we just had 3 of our campers intern at 1517 companies over the summer. I didn't have any of this data until maybe 2 months ago, but it's this faith-based, we're going to keep running this camp because when we're at camp, we love it. And we are so excited. It is literally the best thing that we run at 1517, our teen camp. And all of us are just like more jazzed, have more energy afterwards. And we're so excited to do it again.
That's incredible. I mean, the short-termism is also such a little bit of a bummer that we always have to fight. I remember when I started Intern Society, I told people like, I want to build a Royal Society of the Arts. I want something that's very interesting to people in 300 years.
Love it.
Actually, to work in culture. And, I think you also work in culture in the sense, sense. I work in culture in a very practical sense. But in culture, everything is trust-based. You like something because previously you had a good experience or you heard that somebody else did. And that requires time. Sahil talks about this with regard to Gumroad as well, that these are slow businesses because you build on previous experience. And also, I always feel that one outsized positive element in almost all these communal encounters is a couple of people who have outsized good experience. Like you can't make everybody 100% happy, but if you can make 95% happy, they will drive the whole thing. They will be super invested, and they become the ringleaders, the role model people of how
absolutely. Well, and one of the things that I think about community is that, like you asked me how Burning Man was before we even started the podcast, and I've been part of that community for a really long time. And like that community is a you get what you give community. It's like you don't go to Burning Man and say, what is it going to give to me? You say, hey, I'm going to do this art project. I'm going to interact in these ways. I'm going to like get out of my comfort zone, go walk into that other camp and meet people. No one's like facilitating my experience. And I think of the same thing with our communities of like, we make lots of space for people to like show up and bring themselves to that community. And it's about contributing at our events and leading a session or like being like, hey, impromptu, I'm going to, show people how to do X, Y, and Z and getting them to do that. So for me, it's like less about was this person like happy with our event, but did we provide a space for people to bring themselves to it and contribute more than we could have expected at the event? We just did our first larger camp for actually our community of founders. We had 130 people come to our camp. We call it 1517 Unplugged as an homage to MTV Unplugged. And it was so fun. And people gave amazing fun.
They weren't even born yet when MTV was.
They weren't even born yet. Now, it's funny, some of our investors came to it and they're like, I know what 1517 Unplugged, or I get the Unplugged.
Nirvana, we get it.
It's like 100% Nirvana, Alice in Chains, like, let's go. And it was really, really fun. And we did exactly what I talked about of like, sometimes I think of it as like you make a tree for people and they're the leaves. And so we had time for people to like do little workshops with each other. One person built a 3D printed mini motorcycle that he made and like showed people, here's how you would 3D print a mini motorcycle. One person taught a workshop about like games and how to build like a game and how to be more playful like in your life in general. And it was really, really cool to see these things. And like we weren't curating it. We weren't like, oh, we're picking this over that. It was more like kind of unconference style. Hey, these are the people with the energy who want to do this. Cool. Slot them in. Let's go. And even during the event, we told people at any point, especially during meals, we're on a YMCA campsite and we're all having a meal together. If you want to get up during announcements and say, hey, I'd love to have a conversation about X, Y, or Z, like we can make time for that. So someone got up and said, hey, I really want to talk to EdTech people at the fire pit at this time today. She got up, she said that. I went to her talk at the fire pit. She's had like, I don't know, 15 people maybe all around, just like in really good conversation, like really deep, and sitting around barefoot, like on a campfire, like in the fire pit, like talking about ed tech. And so like to me,
hope, right?
Yeah, exactly. And giving people space that it's not about, we talk a lot about like consumption and like, the endless scrolling and things like that. And our events are more about like, what are you bringing? How are you making this event more than even what we can anticipate it to be? Because we're not controlling it. Okay, I got something else that's hilarious, and then I'll pause. But we got invited to speak at an event, and in this case, I won't say what event it is.
You have to chat it to me quietly.
The person who runs the event, clearly a bit of a control freak, because they sent an email with what each slide of our presentation should be. Slide 1 should be about, like, literally about 1517, should be about this. Slide 2 should be this. Slide 3 this. Slide 4 that. And like, I'm really happy to go to this event. No, but I was just like, oh wow, I was like, control freak issues, like, okay, like, and clearly like doesn't trust or have like faith in the outcome of their community to just like do a good job and like do the thing. And I get it. I can be a control freak in my own way, but I'm kind of more of a control freak about it being organic.
Yeah. Oh, that's so interesting. Like I notice this sometimes happening with InterInteract hosts who have been subjected to this kind of micromanagement. And we're like, no, if you list an event, first of all, you get how big an expert you are. Like, I'm just about to start a reading group about Karl Popper. I'm not a political philosopher, but I will be kind of like reading together with people. We have another host who's just starting an Odyssey reading group. He's not a classicist. He will read together with people. But we have professors listing events or people who have just written a book after years of research. And then, of course, you position yourself as a great expert, but I'm not going to tell you what to say. Like, you're using my platform, and the relief that you notice in people around that is just astonishing. I want to ask you something from, like, I don't have teenage kids, but now just to kind of like put on the hat of a parent, what would you say, based on your extensive experience with this, is the right time to get involved in the life of a child who we think is gifted?
Oh,
So to go to the camp, to apply for fellowships, to just start going to hackathons or meet a little bit outside school.
yeah.
Is there an ideal age?
You're opening a whole can of worms here, because my is that all children are gifted. And I know some people would probably fight me to the death on this. And my belief is that, you know, I have never talked to a 5-year-old that I wasn't super impressed by.
I love
They're
that.
creative, they're interesting, they're articulate, they notice things that nobody else notices. All of these things are gifted qualities. And I think what happens for a lot of children is they get squashed in systems. And then it's like, okay, and some of them get squashed in these systems and don't get identified as gifted. And some of them get identified as gifted, but are still squashed in these systems. So to me, what it's about is when you see a child, a human, because these are human systems we're talking about, getting interested in something. The question is, how do you engage them, encourage the next step? And especially how do you encourage the making, the building, the taking apart of, I have cousins who are 20 years younger than I am. And I was talking to my aunt, and she's like, oh yeah, we noticed that our youngest was getting really, really interested in motors. So we let him take apart the lawnmower, you know, and he's just really interested in this, and he loves to build and make. So like things like that, encouragement, and things like finding someone who could be a potential mentor, someone who like knows what they're doing, taking apart the lawnmower. So, like maybe the parents aren't the right fit for that. I used to be a private tutor, and it's hard. It's really, really hard with your own kids because you have a lot tied up in the outcome and did they do this right, and which leads into all these like existential things of like, will they be successful in their future and blah blah blah. So sometimes you have to find someone else who doesn't have that same tie-in to be someone as a guide, and like to show
Parents need the lawnmower. It's harder
it's just
to apart your own.
it's just too hard. It can be really, really, really hard. But I really think like encouraging young people to like build and take apart and like start doing things as early as possible. We asked our founders at one point, what are things that they would want our teens to know? And we have this whole list of quotes from our founders. And one founder said something really great that, it always comes to mind, which is build anything, build a bench, because like a woodshop bench is what he means. And it's like, yeah, the act of like seeing something through to completion also builds confidence. And like being able to get to the end of it is really important, and not the end of it in that shameful way of like, well, you're not gonna get your A if you don't do this or that. But like for the self-fulfilling doing is like, that's where confidence is built, which gives you the like ideas and creativity and like ability to trust yourself that you can do the next project.
And the act of sharing that I'm doing something socially useful, I build a bench and other people sit down on it. I think I mean, what most people want is social utility. Like you want
and especially children. I mean, this goes back to Montessori and things like that. Part of what's baked into Montessori is like actual responsibility in the world, and cleaning up the classroom, and making things accessible around the home. Children being able to get their own water, because you put things a little lower and you make a spigot for them instead of, oh, the adult always has to do these things for them. Children love this. Even like my godchildren live next door to me, and when they come over and like they sleep over sometimes in the morning, I'll start doing things like unloading the dishwasher. Oh, can I help? Like everybody wants to help. And I'm like, cool. I'm like, this is great. I'm like, I have a small army here. Like there's 3 of them. One can help me unload the dishwasher. One is like taking the recycling down somewhere. one is giving water to the cats. And it's really great. And they love to do it and they love to be like part of it. And I should integrate them more into like, hey, we're gonna like, I don't know, we're gonna make something here at home that then they will see and like be part of all the time, and they'll be part of the creation of that thing.
Be part of the community. In the last couple of minutes that we have, I would love to. So you've been basically, I mean, you founded a school in San Diego, you are board of multiple educational institutions. But if we just look at the Thiel Fellowship and that 1517 fund, we're looking at a career of basically 15 years already spent in this beautiful service of young talent. Is there like change that you're seeing in them? You mentioned at the beginning that you're seeing younger and younger people doing like more and more mature projects. Is this where it's going? And how, if there is a growing agency, where are they getting it from? Is it all from Replit?
Yeah. So yeah, I'm super excited to see these things. And we are seeing younger and younger people getting started earlier. Sometimes people will ask me, where do you want to be with 15, 17, and 10 years? And like, I want to be funding 11-year-olds. I'm like, let's go. And people think it's kind of hilarious. And I'm like, it's gonna happen. Like, and it's not gonna be like the like mom and dad are doing it and like the child protege is like being sort of touted for something. And I think it's gonna be
I love this. The first angel check I wrote, I couldn't wire the guy the money because he wasn't yet 18.
He wasn't 18. Yeah. Yeah. And we're already cutting checks to teenagers, not just with our grants, but with our investments as well. And we have been for years. And we're just seeing younger and younger people get to the frontiers of knowledge. And we're also seeing them like, in the garage, in the basement, in the closet that they're given by a parent. I always say your parents are your first investors. I just want to be your second. And we're seeing more people doing things. And of course, with all these new models that are out there, YouTube has been an incredible influence over the last decade for these young people. And what really excites me is seeing the leaders that we've worked with, like the Dylan Fields of the world, because he was an early Thiel Fellow, Figma IPO'd their public market company now. He is a wonderful leader. He is a wonderful human. And I'm excited for young people to be modeling their behavior off leaders like that. Like that gets me really, really inspired. So I've been saying for a couple years now, the best is yet to come. And I've gotten to work with some really, really amazing people. And it's this flywheel of like when you see, it's kind of like in the Olympics, like there's all these great stories of, hey, someone does the high jump and then and they get a record. And then the next year, 3 other people can jump that height. And there's a whole name for this effect. I can't remember what it's called. But it's true in entrepreneurship. It's true in inventing and making. When you see other people who can do something, it also gives you this like mimetic, like, oh, I saw this person do it, and like, I mean, I'm totally just making this up, but maybe there's something about mirror neurons where it's like, oh, at least part of you now believes something's possible that wasn't possible before. And young people have that positive naivete to go, you know what? Why not? Why not try to start building that thing, even though I have no resources? I have just like a closet in my house and do this.
Which is so, I looked up, it's called record inflation or something like that but I forget. And then there are sometimes like step backs when it goes too far. Like Olga Korbut did that like death spin in the 70s and then they banned it and the whole thing
wow.
again. Yeah, I once read a paper that says
that's interesting. I got to read that.
Yes, because she went too far. It's so interesting how, what does that say about the plasticity of ambition and the plasticity of competition in people, that we all orient ourselves, around a presumed limit.
Right.
And
well,
like,
one, I love that. The plasticity of ambition. That's like your next book. I'm like, wow, that's an incredible title. That's a really interesting concept of like, yeah, I do think there is a plasticity to ambition. I haven't thought about it as like a concept. And I'm like, oh man, I'm going to be thinking about that for a long time.
I need somebody to talk about it with very non-anal, non-stressful slide making. This is your girl.
I'm
yeah,
100%
managing the slide.
Yeah. Right. I was like Fascinating, interesting. I was like, I see that person. I see what's happening there.
Oh my
But
God. Is there something that, because with Interact, like the thing that we produce is great conversation, that
yeah,
special feeling. Like when you're
yeah,
running a record company, you are producing a feeling that people will feel, that thrill, that catharsis, that excitement, that warmth that you get in the moment, right? That's
yeah,
what we are. If we were a factory, that's what we would be producing.
yeah.
And and I feel like for you, there is something related maybe more to ambition than outcome, because the outcome is repeated. It's not a one-off thing. It's not linear. It mutates. Is there something about ambition that you learned in these 15 years that you really did not think about before? Because for me, in
I
Intrinsic,
get.
there are things about human understanding and decency and communication I had no idea about until I started doing it every day.
Yeah. One thing I would say that's come to mind in recent years is that community is an ambition accelerator. People say things like, you're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. I believe these things to be true. And also, what we noticed over our time with the Thiel Foundation over time, it's been 15 years since the beginning of that program, is that bringing people into a highly saturated why not environment has had a profound effect on people. People like Chris Ola, who are out of the Toronto ecosystem, and he came into the fellowship as a researcher. Fast forward to today, he's one of the co-founders of Anthropic, and surely being in the Bay Area environment has had an effect on that. And so I think, the communities you're part of, the places you spend time matter. It's not to say you can't do it somewhere else, but I also think getting injected with like what's possible and bringing that home, wherever home may be, is really important. This is one reason we do the teen camp, is like, hey, come here. We're going to do a deep tech field trip day. Then you're going to go home knowing some more things that are possible in different locations and hopefully bring some of that back to your ecosystem.
Talk about hope for young people. Danielle Strachman, thank you for coming on the Hope Axis. Actually, funnily,
Yeah.
from this morning, because I'm going to the Progress Conference as well, and
Oh,
I
awesome.
interviewed by Existential Hope podcast there. So I'm like,
Amazing.
because Hope X's, I always say it's like Hope X, like SpaceX.
Yeah.
They are,
Yes. I love that.
so it's like Hope X, 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 Hope.
That's so cool. I love that. And you're giving me some really great things to think about. Like sometimes people will ask us what like, like tech areas are we interested in? And we're really interested in the people getting to the frontier of knowledge, not that we think it's going to look a certain way. But no, it's like I am into Hope X. I am into existential hope and like these like futures that are abundant and bright and prosperous and also very human centered. So thank you for bringing that home to me.
I think raising humanity's collective hope levels is
Yeah.
the greatest thing we can do right now. I just don't feel a higher ROI, long-term ROI activity.
Yeah. Well, thank you for what you do. It's such a pleasure to be here.
I will love you. And 15, 17, anybody watching, listening, if you're not familiar, get your ass on their website right now. It's a beautiful website also. It's not one of those like baby Bauhaus cookie cutter websites. It has a personality like Danielle. It's great. Go there and raise your own ambitions and hopes. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you so much. This was great.